everybody, I'm Circuit Swan, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit about Agile and how security teams should work with Agile development teams. I'm assuming you all are either new to Agile or at least early on in the maturity cycle, or maybe just looking for some crazy ideas. So who am I and why the hell am I talking about this? I've been doing Agile since around 2004 or 5, somewhere in there. I worked with Aramark, Rackspace, now I'm with a really big insurance provider. And in these positions, I've done business analyst, program manager, product manager, etc. I've even done some sysadmin. And I've either been managing the teams using Agile or I've been a participant. So I mostly used Kanban and Scrum, but I've had exposure to other stuff. By the way, everything I say here doesn't represent my employers or anybody else. So today I'm going to tell you about a mishap one of my friends of mine had and how Agile doesn't get used well by some companies, and I'm going to tell you how your company can hopefully do it a little bit better. So at first we're going to explain what is Agile, because I'm assuming you all kind of don't have an in-depth understanding. We're going to do a high-level summary, and then second, how do you, the security team, actually integrate with those Agile development teams? All right, so how do teams actually manage work? Right now, most teams use waterfall, and waterfall means that you're going to work in a 6 to 12 month cycle. You're going to get a whole bunch of features in this big release, and you're going to have a big marketing thing around it. You do everything in order. So first you collect all the requirements, do all the development, then do all the testing. Oh no, we found some bugs. Go all the way back up to the start of the waterfall and go down again. So these are Gantt charts, and most places use these. It is actually great if you don't have scope changes all the time. So if you're building a house, cool. If you're building software, yeah, we have a shit ton of bugs. All right, so what's better to do when you have a lot of scope changes? Agile. In this case, I'm going to be talking specifically about Scrum. So Scrum does things in little tiny cycles that are 1 to 3 weeks long, and you're concentrating on 1, maybe 2 features. So instead of a whole package set of features, you're just getting that 1 or 2. You do the requirements, the dev, the testing for that whole thing. And so you start off with your kickoff meeting, get your stakeholders on, decide what you're doing, work on it, have daily check-ins, and at the end you present it to all of your stakeholders so everybody's on the same page and you get it out the door. The idea is that you're going to fail fast. So if you release something and everybody gives you feedback, this sucks, you don't bother to go on to the next feature. You either improve it or maybe you throw out that whole feature chain. For those of you who are gamers, you know how there's like chains of things that connect? Well, a lot of times program managers have this feature with all these other follow-up features. If nobody likes them, don't do them. It's a waste of money. So this is potentially saving you a lot of money. All right, so Agile methodologies. Who here knows that they use Scrum? All right, got some. What about Kanban? Lean? Stream programming? All right, so all of these are sets of rules for how to implement Agile. Agile is a large framework with 4 rules. All of these have a lot more rules, which are basically for people to sell books because they came up with their own special flavor of doing it. You can Google them and get the specific differences, but really they all are going for the same end goal and just have a different set of rules and terms. So I'm using Scrum terms here. You can find out what the equivalent is or catch me for a drink after and ask me. So what is Agile? You're delivering feature by feature. You want to do continuous integration and continuous delivery. What does that mean? That means that the developers are putting things out, once a week, once every other week, and it's going out the door all the way to production. This is going to be feedback driven. As soon as it goes out the door, the stakeholders give you feedback, the customers give you feedback. Quick, you cycle back in again. That means you're failing fast. Again, don't do the whole tree if nobody's actually using the feature, which reduces waste. Well, end result of this is now DevOps is a thing. Why is DevOps a thing? Well, if I'm having to get this out the door really fast and I'm waiting on the ops team to deploy my code, that's going to slow me down. And since this is all about fast, they're like, we're developers, we're just going to figure out how to do it ourselves. If they do it well, that's okay. If they don't, talk about a huge security hole. This is why you need to get integrated teams. Also, recently DevSecOps has popped up, and that's a whole nother animal. All right, so what are the actual 4 rules for Agile? It's these, but keep in mind these are a scale, so everything in bold is more important than the things that are not. You can't either or this. So the goal here is that when you evaluate the work you have or evaluate what you're doing, this is how you balance your trade-offs and your decisions. You want to be collaborating with people. You want to value the individuals on your teams and what they know. They know a lot of stuff instead of just, we must follow this process, raw. Also responding to change. This is super key. This is why it's all about the feedback loop. And security needs to get in that feedback loop. All right, what is an Agile? Either or. I'm not going to do that documentation. That's not important. No, that's not acceptable. If your dev teams are doing that, please kick them for me or send me and I'll kick them. Also, minimal viable product. Keyword viable. If there's security holes in it, tell them it's not fucking viable. Also, Agile being just a buzzword. We're going to do Agile and we're not going to do any trading and we're not going to read any books. No, that doesn't work. Then you're just saying stuff and not actually doing anything. All right, so you're outnumbered. You're the security team. You've got tons of development teams, and they're producing a lot more stuff a lot faster than they used to. So remember I was telling you about the fail case from earlier? Well, in this case, there's a security team, and the company went to a summit, and they decided, hey, let's go spin up a whole bunch of Agile development teams. So they spun up a whole bunch and really didn't give training to the whole company. So surprise, we now have a whole bunch of people doing a whole bunch of stuff, and nobody really knows what they're doing. All right, so what about you? We know what Agile is, and you, the security team, are now going to figure out how to use this to your advantage. You need to exploit the system. If you don't know how to do that, maybe you're in the wrong career path. All right, so we're all working for the same company. What are they trying to accomplish? They're trying to put out some software. They're trying to make some money. That's kind of what you want the company to do, right? Nothing's ever going to be 100% secure. If you believe that, no. No. How about 90% secure with 10% you can mitigate? Also, the development team is not your enemy. They're trying to get the features out because that's what they're being told to do. So the trick is, can you get security to be one of the requirements so they can't put it out the door and secure? And we all like to get paid, right? So they're making stuff so you can both get paid. So you're on the same team. All right, so where do you start? Your developers have managers, and those managers also have managers. Can you go get someone on your team who's good with social engineering to chat with them? Maybe try, hey, this other company in our industry had a breach, and it cost them a ton in fees and a ton of terrible PR. We don't want to be that group. Can we get a little more integrated so this doesn't happen to us? Or, hey, our customers really value security, and that's a choice they make when they're picking between the different vendors. If we can advertise how great our security is, we're going to get more people choosing us, because that's an important factor in the purchases here. Or maybe even, hey, remember when we released that thing and there was the giant gap and I made you guys redo it and it took 2 months of dev time? We don't want to get in that situation again. That was a waste of time for everyone, right? So whatever you need to use to leverage, this is going to be super hard. Get your best social engineer on here by I lost my mic again. Do whatever you need to do. Get them to buy in that security is important and the dev teams need to listen to you. All right, so now they have to listen to you. What do you do now? Find the product owner. The product owner defines the scope, which specifically in Scrum is called definition of done. This means until you hit all of these checkboxes, you do not get to go to production. So if pass a security scan or pass a security review is in there, they have to think about you when they're initially starting to do the development, while they're doing the development at the end when they're trying to get it out the door. So if you can get into there, you aren't a last minute thought. They're actually going to architect you in, not because they love you, but because they want to be done with their stuff. However you get buy-in, that's fine. So in my friend's case, the problem kind of ran into here, where the dev teams didn't consider security a requirement. So when they suddenly were like, yeah, we get to do CI/CD, this is great, we're going to do whatever it is we want, and we're not going to bother checking in with security. So specifically, they were given Google Cloud accounts, and this was brand new for the company, and so there was no policies in place around this. Well, what they managed to do was waste at least a full-time employee's salary in 1 month on just spinning up nonsense and not really having a rule around like, hey, we should spin these down when we're not using them, or maybe keep track of how many we spin up at a time when we click the button 1,000,000 times. So it could have been a little weirder, but you know, take what you can get. All right, you've got buy-in. And now what do you do that you're part of the definition of done and the developer managers care about you? Well, you need to get to be an optional attendee. Why do I want to be an optional attendee? Well, again, if you're outnumbered, lots of them, few of you, and you look at the features that are going out, you can be like, don't care, don't care, don't care, shit, I need to go to those meetings. So this way you don't spend your whole day in meetings. You can do your own threat modeling here. So stakeholders in Scrum are probably the key thing. That's going to get you invited to the kickoff meetings where they go over, hey, here's what we're going to do in the next 3 weeks. And also the feature demos at the end that says, this is what we did in these 3 weeks, and we're about to kick this out the door. So that gives you an idea of what's coming down the pike and what you can do about it. keep the line of communication open. Be easy to find. If you are not easy to find, they have to go out of their way. They're not going to bother. That's extra work for them. Make sure you've got, chat or email, whatever it is. They can ask you quick questions. Also, be a resource. If they ask you a question, don't just respond with, I don't know what you're doing, I'll get back to you later. Be like, hey, maybe you can talk to so-and-so, that team did it before. Or, hey, talk to this group, they did it before. Or look, here's a great article on the internet, read that. You don't have to spoon feed them, but at least point them in the right place. All right, so you're involved, you're showing up to meetings. What now? Well, it's all great if they know that they need to be secure, but there needs to be some written policies that they can actually follow, because again, you don't scale. So take what's in your head, write it down, make it available. Make it easy to find and search, because again, if it's not easy and they can't find it, they're just going to be like, there isn't a policy, I can do whatever I want. Also, make sure it's written so that anyone, the developers, the project managers, the business people can read it and understand it, because if it's super technical, they're either going to zone out, not understand it, and just kind of ignore it. So if you can, reference a how-to. So if we're talking about, hey, you need to have HTTPS here as a policy, if you've got a website up and going, where within my company do I get these certificates? Otherwise, bam, I'm going to pull out my credit card, go to GoDaddy, get a certificate, and then you've got some shadow IT going on. And I'm sure we all don't want shadow IT, right? All right, again, be easy to contact with questions. All right, education. So everyone has the stuff that when you onboard a developer, you have to learn this, you have to learn that, you have to go through this little training course. Well, that's all very generic to the company usually. Can you work with the onboarding team to get very specific stuff so that PHP or C# secure code training can be involved as part of that onboarding process? This way security sort of knows, or developers know what security is thinking about when they start coding. There's things like codebashing.com, which is a resource. There's a lot of resources out there, or if you have your own internal team that can build something, you can make something in-house, but you don't have to. So, all right, you've got them taught about here's how you do secure coding for us specifically, but what about things that you have available that they can actually use? Is there an API for your static code analysis, or is there that they can trigger? And if there is, teach them how to use that API. Remember, they're DevOps now, and that's cool, so they should be able to do that. And so every time they do a build, they can get that report back. They don't need to wait on you to tell them, oh, you failed this web scan, you need to go fix this and that. So if you make it easy for them to do that, then you're going to be fine, because they're going to do the scans and come back to you after they've got a clean one. Maybe they had to do it 3 times, but at least you didn't have to sit there and explain it to them. All right, finally, you've got policies, you've got involved, and now you're going to be in the meetings. Well, make these meetings low key. If they're super stressful, again, people automatically resist things that are scary or difficult. So if it is intimidating to go meet with security because they're like, "Arr," all the time, I'm going to avoid these meetings. Well, all right, low pressure. Everyone's here at the meeting. You're going through their architecture diagram. Don't just read it and then tell them where the problems are. Tell them what parts are good and what parts are bad and what you're thinking as you go through it. You're going to be training them so that they give you better information next time, that they architect it better the next time around. Maybe even educate them on here's why I'm thinking this. There's this particular vulnerability out there that affects us because we're using Windows servers or because we're using Linux servers. And they can incorporate that into their choices the next round. Finally, they can start doing their own threat modeling. If you've walked them through this enough times, when they're architecting, they're going to be able to say, okay, the worst case scenario I run into here is my web server's going to 404. Not a big deal. I can email security. They probably don't need to have a meeting with me, but I'll keep them in the loop. Oh, in this particular case, this user could potentially have access to this other user's stuff. We need to make sure that's written well. Let me make sure security double checks this, and I let them know that's the worst case scenario here. It's going to make your job easier because they're going to be on team security suddenly. Don't say the word no. Automatic defense mechanisms go up. People stop listening to you. So no no's. On the other hand, do not let them do stupid shit. So there's nice ways to say no, like how about this instead? Or have you considered this? Or hey, here's another way to do this. There's a lot of ways to say no that are not using the word no. Get practiced at them. Go back to social engineering again. I was talking about that. You guys need to be good at finding the exploits in the Agile system and also social engineering the system. So if you can work with people's psychology and not get them to turn off, they'll actually listen to you. All right, so as I was saying, the friend, lots of cloud accounts spun up, totally outnumbered, and luckily they only lost 1 full-time employee's salary worth on some servers. that really wasn't too bad, was it? Like in here, nothing's exploded yet. Well, what should have happened? Well, if development management was involved, as soon as they found out they had Google Cloud accounts, it would have been like, yay, Google Cloud accounts, hey, security, is there a policy? Oh, there's not a policy yet. Well, is there any guidelines we should follow? Okay, we'll follow these guidelines and circle back when you have something. And maybe those guidelines would have been like, don't spin up anything in the prod environment, and hey, make sure you keep track of what you've spun up so we can check it later. Wouldn't have been great, but it would have been something. Instead, they didn't think about security at all. They just ran off and did their own thing and had to get somebody chasing them down after, like, runaway cats. Nobody likes runaway cats. All right, in summary, you get buy-in. Make sure you're integrated into the definition of done so that they can't not think about you. Be a partner, have clear policies, get them some training and education, be available, don't be stressful. Again, stressful equals shadow IT. Lack of education equals shadow IT. Shadow IT will cost you more time and energy than you think. Don't be no. I know the cat's cute, but don't be no. All right, so we went through everything. What really is Agile? It's fast delivery of features. It values feedback, and why are businesses doing it? They're all told they can get 50% productivity increase. Note, this is if you follow everything you're supposed to, if you're doing it properly, if you've trained everyone. They're not actually doing this in most cases. 50%, and bam, they're going to want to do it. So this is why you're going to be stuck with it. It's not going away. It is kind of a buzzword. Maybe you can be like, hey, this is awesome. We like Agile. Can we get some training now so we can actually do it right? All right, so in summary, you are actually on team business because you like paychecks, right? The developers really aren't the enemy. They're just trying to get their thing done, and they're really excited about writing code. They should also be on team security. If you educate them, a lot of them might be like, oh, a little bit tinfoil hat there in security land, but at least they're going to start knowing what you're looking for. And maybe they'll actually start to understand what's up, and maybe they'll even come to BSides. Also, Agile's not the enemy either. Like, a lot of companies do it wrong, so it seems like it's the enemy, but just try and improve it and do it right. If you're doing it right, you'll actually enjoy it a bit more. And 100% secure is not going to happen. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. 90% is good because you can mitigate around the 10% you know. If you get shadow IT, there is no mitigation around stuff you don't know. Here's a whole bunch of resources that you can actually get when I post this up on Twitter. And here's my blog where it's going to be posted. There's my Twitter. And I have a lot of presenter notes in here with like links to resources. So if you pull down the PowerPoint, make sure you read the notes. Thank you.
Awesome work. So we've got time for questions. Anybody have any questions? Just raise your hand. She'll pick you, and I'll bring you a microphone. No questions. So I have a question. Nicole, I love that 100% secure is not viable. Yeah, right there. Like, not going to happen. What are some fights that I'm not going to ask that you've seen because then we leak IP, whatever. But that you recommend, maybe we give this one up in exchange for this.
So when you're having people do RESTful APIs, or at least when we were doing that, one of my companies, you'll get into a lot of fights where we want it to have these 12 things all securing the front end. You can actually do a lot of cleanup in the middle layer. And so instead of making sure everything is implemented on the front end, just catch it in the middle before it goes to the back. And this way, if you have 10 different teams doing the APIs and you send everyone through the same middle layer, you can recycle that code that's filtering for, quotes or whatever else, and not everyone has to rewrite it. And if you get 10 people rewriting it the same way, you're also going to have somebody who implements it wrong. So if you can centralize any of that stuff and be like, okay guys, we'll let you skip that, but you need to run through this middle layer, that's probably going to make your life a little bit easier. Because if they realize they keep having to do the same work over and over, they might roll their eyes more.
Thanks. One more question in the front, just 1 second.
There you go. Thank you. Have you had any occasion to train developers on what the categories of security problems are? Like explain why a cross-site scripting vulnerability is bad and what you can do with it as an attacker?
So there are some groups, I think Cisco's actually pretty good at this, and some other teams I know who do actually run people through some like exercises in a sandbox to just explain here's what happens or show them news articles, so at least they have an idea of the different types. Usually it comes in conjunction with the OWASP Top 10 training, so I think that tends to be valuable. I think it would be nice if there was better in-a-box training for developers, because a lot of times if you just read something or see it, it's not going to sink in as much as like, oh, this is what this particular thing means. So Cisco has been, I think, the best at that I know of.
Sorry,
There we go.
I have to boot the mic. So one thing that actually we started doing at my employer that's been very handy has been, so the OWASP has a couple of vulnerable VMs or vulnerable store products, like web apps and stuff like that, where it's not only finding, what the bug is and exploiting it, you also have to go in and fix it. So we're making all our developers go through a couple of these just in a little sandbox VM, just to go through the motions of, finding, exploiting, and fixing, just so that everybody's on the same page. And that has been actually a great deal of fun for them, because they always hear about these things, but they never get to do them. And it's much like lock picking, it's one thing to pick a lock, but when you realize this is the same as on the front of your house, okay, now it makes sense.
Anybody else?
My question is, you've talked about the Agile process as it should be. What have you seen in the way of people saying, oh, well, we're using Agile, so we can't do this, we don't need to do this, this is the way it is. What's the things you've seen where people have tried to make use of the process to say, screw you, we can't do security?
Basically, I think most companies, when they start, before they've been doing it for a while, are like, the book said this, or the consultant said this, and so, I must do XYZ and I'm going to ignore you. Since I am the Agile coach for a large insurance company, I actually have the power to go in and say like, haha, that's cute. Here, look, I have other references that show you're wrong. That doesn't always go over well, especially when, say, IBM was the consultant who originally came in and explained Agile poorly. But generally, I've found going into the product owner and having quotes from books. Jeff Sutherland's Do Twice the Work in Half the Time, I believe is the title of it. It's in the resource guide. Is a really good resource to find specific quotes and be like, this is the guy who started the whole Agile movement, and this is what he says, and this is not aligning, so I'm sorry, but I don't know where you got your data, but you're wrong. So using facts politely is helpful. But yeah, a lot of times they're just like, I don't have to worry about this because it says I just need to get it out to production by this date, not that it needs to work. It's like, what part of working code did you miss in the Agile Manifesto? Also, the Agile Manifesto, print it out, have it around, because like that whole working code and collaboration pieces, you can point back to them and be like, this is the gospel, let's follow it. All right, and I think maybe time for one more question if it's short. No. All
Nobody.
right. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nicole.